Under India's G20 presidency, the Startup 20 Engagement Group has moved to Sikkim to explore, engage, and include new startup ecosystems. The Startup 20 Sikkim Sabha, organized in Gangtok on 18th and 19th March, is expected to open new dimensions and opportunities for the continuously evolving Indian startup ecosystem. Today, in this interview with All India Radio News, we have the chair of Startup 20 and Director, Atal Innovation Mission, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, to share highlights of the Startup 20 Sikkim Sabha, forwarding of the engagement group's objectives from the inception meeting in Hyderabad, and new engagement platforms, among other aspects of Startup 20. Welcome, Dr. Vaishnav.
Thank you very much.
What is the concept of Startup 20, G20's youngest engagement group, and what are its objectives? How will it contribute to India's phenomenal startup growth story?
Thank you very much. Startup 20 is the only new engagement group under India's G20 presidency this year. The objective of this group is to provide recommendations to the world leaders on how the startup ecosystems of the global 20 nations can work together and support startups. This group came about through India's proposal that we should add a startup-related group to the G20 architecture. And other global 20 nations agreed to this proposal to form this group.
How will it contribute to India's phenomenal startup growth story?
So India's growth story indeed is phenomenal. Today we are known as the third largest startup ecosystem of the world, with over 93,000 registered startups, 107 unicorns, companies that have valuation of $1 billion or more. There has been $40 billion of private investment into the startup ecosystem last year. And we have built a significant infrastructure for startups to be supported in our nation. That being said, there is still the need where startups that take on very difficult challenges and require high amount of investments are still often not able to find that investment in India because the investor appetite for such startups is growing slowly, and so many of them end up going abroad. This is not only the India story. This is happening to other startup ecosystems around the world. And there is an opportunity for all of us to learn from each other's best practices so that we can support startups better and they don't have to use the term of startup ecosystem, hustle so much and run around to be supported for wonderful ideas that they are producing.
Okay. What are the new non-traditional platforms offered at Startup 20 events to engage young startup founders?
So typically engagement groups of G20 comprise of stakeholders who are experts who come together, deliberate upon topics, and produce a policy recommendation or what is called the communique. Startup 20 also will be doing that, but there is a very clear recognition in the Startup 20 engagement group that if we stayed limited to only expert opinions, we would have missed the real action on the ground, where people come up with new ideas, they form startups, they get investments. Policymakers make policies to make the startup landscape better. All of these plethora of activities, they take place on the ground. And to harness or to give voice to that bottom up energy of the startup ecosystem, we have created a platform called Startup 20X. This platform allows anybody in the ecosystem to co-brand their event with Startup 20X, advertise it on the global stage, and also put their content on the Startup 20X's global stage. The idea here is that ecosystems which even in their normal course of activities are celebrating many wonderful achievements of startups, we should be able to put all of that on the global stage to first hear from them as to what they want in terms of how they want to be supported, as well as for the world to know that such things go on. So that's one platform. Another platform which we just launched in the Sikkim Sabha today is the Startup 20 Fellows Program. Okay. There are many young scholars and practitioners who are eager to engage in the process of global startup policy making. This platform allows them to become those interns, junior fellows, senior fellows, to work with very experienced industry and startup leaders, work alongside these leaders to research and operate in global startup ecosystems.
Okay, moving on. How is the engagement group's agenda being taken forward through the Startup 20 Sikkim Sabha?
So we started our inception. Our inception meeting was in Hyderabad at the end of January this year. And there we had gone into that meeting with what is called the issue note. Every G20 engagement group has an issue note that they start with. The issue note outlined the objectives and the deliverables of this group as India sees it. In Hyderabad, we got input from all the Indian as well as international delegates. We have taken in that input, synthesized it, and using that input, we have now produced a new version of a new as well as a much richer version of the issue note, which we are now calling the Policy Communique -1 draft. Okay. This is what is being discussed in Sikkim
Sabha. Okay. So we would like to know, what are the challenges in forming up a uniform policy for diverse business ecosystems, and how are they being addressed?
So that's a fascinating question. One of the work streams of Startup 20 is foundations. Yeah. This work stream exists because if you look across the startup ecosystems of the world, there is no there is no uniform definition of a startup, and there is a great diversity in terminology being used. This group is trying to harmonize what we want to define as a startup from the policy perspective. So harmony is one way to go. Maybe the group will decide that no, we want to live with all these different definitions, whatever it is. But that conversation, today there hasn't been a platform to have that conversation. Startup 20 Engagement Group is a platform to do so. Similarly, in the area of finance, there isn't a policy framework that we have articulated as the world to unlock financing across the ecosystems of various nations. Such financing does occur on more sort of market opportunistic basis, and that is fine. But what we want to be able to do is to systematically unlock the financing. What should be the rules of systematically unlocking the financing so that the startups that are most needed by all parts of the world can be amplified?
Okay. Sir, could you please tell us what has been the response to the Startup 20 Sikkim Sabha and what are the prospects?
The response has been, I must say, very heartwarming. Today, as we finished the first day of the Startup Sikkim Sabha, there were 49 international delegates from 15 different nations who joined us. There were 130 Indian delegates who were also there. And they came together, and there are 5 work streams under Startup 20. Foundations, I already mentioned. Alliances, which is trying to say how do we want to form linkages. Finance, inclusion, and sustainability. Each of these work stream today discussed in detail what they want their policy paper to look like. That will be the output of the Sikkim Sabha, and that we will take forward into further synthesis towards the communique.
Okay. What is your message for startup founders in general and specifically for those in Sikkim where startups have made small beginnings?
Well, startup founders are one of the most valuable contributors of our economy. There are many problems that require innovation, and startups are the ones who are in the best position to innovate rapidly to solve those problems. And these startup founders who are taking personal risk to improve lives of all people are some of the most important people of our nation. Many of them are also going against the grain of pressures to join conventional jobs, pressures to study further, pressures to settle down and have a family, whatever else. But they have a conviction to do something, and they are moving forward with that conviction, which is not a small thing. And so we really, I'd like to acknowledge their contribution, and I'd like to say that we as the nation's ecosystem builders of the innovation ecosystem are here to support you. For Sikkim, I am very impressed by what has happened in Sikkim in the last 3 years. In just over 3 years, there are over 80 unique startups in Sikkim.
80.
Yes, and in the flavor of these startups is also very unique to Sikkim, given its natural resources, given its sensibility, given its culture. And so I think you are absolutely right that this is indeed a beginning. But the opportunity, I must say, is really large here, because the conventional economic forces are not as strong here as they may be in bigger cities of India. And so I encourage all aspiring startup founders, men and women, now and in the future, to stay engaged. Sikkim ecosystem already is well on its way to building much more opportunity. and it is we have to make progress on this path together.
Thank you, sir. This brings us to the end of an insightful perspective on the Startup 20 engagements under India's G20 presidency. We would like to thank Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, Chair of Startup 20 and Director, Atal Innovation Mission, for taking out time for this interview from his busy schedule at the Startup Sikkim Sabha. The interviewer was Usha Sharma.